$60,628,524 million. That is the sum total of money being paid to African presidents every single year. That is with the exception of 3 African presidents whose salaries remain a mystery. Who are these presidents? Just stick around and find out. Also, you get to find out why their salaries are hidden. The highest paid African leader on this list collects over $50 million. Do you know who? How much do you think your president bags each year as an annual salary? You can leave your guess in the comment section before we proceed. Africa. It's big and the West calls it a war-torn continent. The bulk of its 54 nations has been categorized as third world countries. And it has also been termed one of the world's power-hungry continents. Yet many people dream to live in Africa and lead its beautiful people. And it's not hard to see why. The continent has many untapped resources, has a huge untapped market, and is critical to the growth of the rest of the world. Even better, African leaders are among the richest leaders in the world. The continent's total GDP growth stands at 3.7%, with nominal GDP of $2.6 trillion. Known to be a continent that harbors some of the world's poorest people, African presidents are surprisingly wealthy and earn huge sums of money that can sustain generations to come. In this video, you will get to know the annual salaries of every president in Africa. But before we jump in, we will be glad if you take a few seconds of your time to hit the like button. Make sure to stay with us till the end so you don't miss out on any detail. Let us begin with Algeria. 1. Abdelmadjid Tebboune. Algeria is found in northern Africa with a Mediterranean coastline and a Saharan desert in its interior. Their president Abdelmadjid Tebboune has been president since 2017. His annual salary stands at $57,259, making him one of the richest people in Algeria. Next up, 2. João Lourenço, the president of Angola. Angola is found right in the middle of Africa, with a population of about 33 million people, with a total GDP of $72 billion. João Lourenço, Angola's president, earns $17,824 annually and is among the least paid presidents in Africa. 3. Patrice Talon, the president of Benin. Despite Porto Novo being the country's capital city of this country, Cotonou is its largest city and the administrative capital. Its president, Patrice Talon, has served for 6 years running and earns a salary of $29,810 annually. 4. MOKGWEETSI Masisi, the president of Botswana. Botswana is found in southern Africa. The country's president, MOKGWEETSI Masisi, currently earns a salary of $85,223 a year. Let's talk about Burkina Faso. 5. Paul-Henri Sandaogo Damiba, Burkina Faso. Burkina Faso is found in Western Africa. Its capital, Ouagadougou, is the largest in the country where the president lies. Paul-Henri Sandaogo Damiba is the country's current president who overthrew Roch Marc Christian to become president. President Damiba currently earns $33,810 as annual salary. 6. Evariste Ndayishimiye, Burundi. Burundi is an Eastern African country and is currently the poorest country in Africa. Evariste Ndayishimiye, Burundi's current president, earns an annual salary of $47,300. 7. Paul Biya, Cameroon. He has been in power for 40 years now. Paul Biya is the second richest president in Africa with an annual salary of $620,976. 8. José Maria Neves, president of Cape Verde. Cape Verde is a very small island country in Africa. It is found in the westernmost part of the continent. It has a population of a little over 500,000 with a GDP of $1.9 billion. This tiny nation is ruled by José Maria Neves, who receives an annual salary of $20,380. 9. Faustin Archange Touadéra, the president of Central African Republic. His country is rich in diamonds, gold, oil, and uranium, but has one of the world's poorest populations with a GDP of $2.3 billion. Faustin Archange Touadéra earns an annual salary of $42,524. Here's a fact about the country you probably didn't know about. It is the first African country to make Bitcoin legal tender. 10. Mahamat Deby, Chad's president. Chad has a GDP of $11 billion. Its president, Mahamat Deby, has ruled the country since April 2021, after the death of his father, President Idris Deby, in a military operation against rebels. His annual salary stands at $16,640. So far, we've looked at the salaries of 10 African presidents. Now, if you are enjoying this video, be sure to leave a like. That way, you will be notified every time we post a video like this one. We know you've been anxious to know the African leaders whose salaries are hidden. Well, let me spill the beans. The three presidents are Andry Rajoelina, the president of Madagascar, Mohamed Bazoum, the president of Niger, and the president of Togo, Faure Gnassingbé. 11. AZALI Assoumani, Comoros. Comoros is a country on the eastern coast of Africa. It is a group of islands that make up a single country. It has a population of about 900,000 and a GDP of $1.3 billion. The capital, Moroni, is also the biggest town in Comoros. AZALI Assoumani, the country's president, currently earns $117,060 annually. 12. FELIX Tshisekedi, Democratic Republic of the Congo. Democratic Republic of the Congo is also a country found in the middle of Africa. It has a population of 89 million with a GDP of $51.2 billion. The country's capital, Kinshasa, doubles as the largest city in Central Africa. DR Congo's president, FELIX Tshisekedi, earns a salary of $51,500. 13. DENIS Sassou, the Republic of Congo. Found in the middle of Africa, Congo Republic has a population of about 5 million. With a GDP of $10.8 billion, Congo's president, DENIS Sassou, is paid $108,400 annually. 14. Alassane Ouattara, Ivory Coast. Ivory Coast is a West African country with about 26 million people. Its capital city is Yamoussoukro, but its central economic and administrative city is Abidjan. With a GDP that stands at $64 billion, its president, Alassane Ouattara, earns a salary of $100,000. 15. Ismail Omar Guelleh, Djibouti. A country in Eastern Africa, Djibouti has a population of about 1 million with a GDP of $3.3 billion. Ismail Omar Guelleh rules Djibouti and is one of the lowest earning presidents in Africa with an annual salary of $10,000. 16. Abdel Fattah Hussein Khalil el-Sisi, Egypt. Egypt is one of Africa's most powerful nations, especially because of its role in the development of knowledge in the world. It has a GDP of $404 billion. The country's president, Abdel Fattah Hussein Khalil el-Sisi, receives the sum of $70,400 yearly. 17. Theodoro Obiang Nguema, Equatorial Guinea. Equatorial Guinea is a country located in the middle of Africa. It has a population of more than 1 million with a GDP of $10.02 billion. Its president, Theodoro Obiang Nguema, earns $152,680 a year. 18. Isaias Afwerki, Eritrea. Eritrea is a small country with a population of 3 million and is found in the northeastern part of Africa. The country's president, Isaias Afwerki, earns $6,000 annually, making him one of the lowest earning presidents in Africa. 19. King Mswati III of Eswatini. Distinct from other countries with presidents, Eswatini does not have a president. Rather, the country is ruled by a king. King Mswati III is present king, but there is an incumbent, Cleopas Dlamini, who serves as PM. The king's position of this small nation absorbs up to $56,051,336 as salary annually, making King Mswati III the richest leader in Africa. 20. Salworks Youth, Ethiopia. Ethiopia is found in Eastern Africa. It has a population of about 114 million. It is one of the richest countries in Africa with a GDP of $111 billion. The country's president, Saul Works Youth, earns an annual salary of $4,000 to $5,270. 21. Ali Bongo Ondimba, Gabon. Gabon is one of those countries found right in the middle of the African continent. The capital city of Gabon, Libreville, doubles as the country's largest city. Gabonese President Ali Bongo Ondimba earns the sum of $6,000 to $5,000 annually. 22. Adama Barrow, the Gambia. Gambia is a West African nation that has a population of over 2 million inhabitants. Its capital city is Banjul, which is the most densely populated metropolitan area in the country. With a GDP that stands at $1.9 billion, Gambia's president, Adama Barrow, earns $6,000 to $5,000, the same as his counterpart in Gabon. 23. Nana Akufo-Addo, Ghana. Found in the western part of the continent, Ghana is one of Africa's fast-growing countries with a population of about 31 million inhabitants and a GDP of $72.3 billion. The country's president, Nana Akufo-Addo, is paid a yearly salary of $76,000. 24. Mamadi Doumbouya, Guinea. Guinea's mineral wealth makes it potentially one of Africa's richest countries. Yet, its people are among the poorest in West Africa, with a GDP of $15.6 billion. Lieutenant Colonel Mamadi Doumbouya overthrew President Alpha Condé in a coup in September 2021 and became the country's president. President Doumbouya earns an annual salary of $22,390. 25. Umaro Sissoko Embalo, Guinea-Bissau. Once hailed as a model for African development, Guinea-Bissau is now one of the poorest countries in the world, with a GDP of $1.6 billion. Today, Guinea-Bissau's economy relies heavily on foreign aid and has a massive foreign debt that President Umaro Sissoko Embalo's regime has been unable to pay. He is one of Africa's least paid presidents with an annual salary of $6,360. 26. Uhuru Kenyatta, Kenya. If one is to count great nations in Africa, Kenya will be one of them. It is one of the countries found in the eastern part of Africa, with a population of over 53 million and a GDP of $98.8 billion. While the country's president, Uhuru Kenyatta, is not the richest in Africa, he is arguably the wealthiest head of state in East Africa with an annual salary of $192,200. President Kenyatta is the son of Kenya's first president, Jomo Kenyatta. 27. King Letsie III of Lesotho. Among the very few monarchical governments in Africa is that of Lesotho. With a population of about 2 million, it is located in the southern part of Africa. For many decades, thousands of workers in the country have been forced to find work at South African mines, owing to the lack of job opportunities in the country. Its leader, King Letsie III, works in close collaboration with Dr. Mokgweetsi Majoro, the country's prime minister. The monarch, who has no legislative or executive powers, earns the sum of $52,778 yearly. 28. George Weah of Liberia. Liberia is Africa's oldest republic, but it only became known in the 90s for its long-running and ruinous civil war. It is the only country in Africa that has been ruled by a female president. Liberia's president, George Weah, who is a former football star, currently earns $90,000 a year. 29. Mohamed Al-Menfi of Libya. Libya, a mostly desert and oil-rich country, has a population of about 6.4 million with a GDP of $25.42 billion. The toppling of long-term leader Muammar Gaddafi in 2011 led to a power vacuum and instability with no authority in full control. However, the country has an incumbent leader called Mohamed Al-Menfi, who was appointed in a Libyan political dialogue forum. He is currently paid $105,000 annually. 30. Andry Rajoelina of Madagascar. Situated off the southeast coast of Africa, Madagascar has a population of roughly 27 million with a GDP that stands at $13.7 billion. Businessman Andry Rajoelina took office as president in 2019, ending a decade of political turbulence. Andry Rajoelina's current net worth and salary remain unknown. 31. Lazarus Chakwera, the President of Malawi. Malawi is a landlocked country located in the southern part of Africa, with a population of about 19 million. In recent years, the country has achieved significant economic growth, with its GDP pegged at $11.9 billion. The country's president, Lazarus Chakwera, who is a Christian preacher and theologian, is currently paid $74,300 annually. 32. Colonel Assimi Goïta, Mali. Once home to the richest man and ruler to ever walk the earth, the landlocked West African country of Mali is one of the largest on the continent with a population of over 20 million. Its founding leader, Mansa Musa, is said to have had an estimated net worth in today's currency of $400 billion. Its president, Assimi Goïta, is a military leader who made himself president 2 days after seizing power in Mali's second coup in 9 months last year. This country is poor, but it will shock you to know that its military leader is paid $68,900. 33. Mohamed Ghazouani, Mauritania. The Islamic Republic of Mauritania is a desert country, with a population of about 4 million people. The largely desert nation is rich in mineral resources, especially iron and ore, and is one of Africa's newest oil producers with a GDP of $8.2 billion as of 2021 World Bank figures. Its president, Mohamed Ghazouani, took power in a coup in 2008 and became president the following year. While his net worth has been growing significantly and is currently estimated between $1 million to $5 million, Mohamed earns $300,000 annually. 34. Prithviraj, Mauritius. With a population of 1.3 million, Mauritius is a stable and prosperous Indian Ocean island nation in Africa. Mauritania now has one of Africa's highest per capita incomes with a GDP of $11.1 billion. It's therefore not hard to see why the country's president, Rupon, earns $93,783 annually. 35. King Mohammed VI of Morocco. With a population of more than 35 million, Morocco has been ruled by many dynasties since its foundation in 788 AD. Rich in phosphate, the country constitutes 2/3 of the world's phosphates and has a GDP of $132.7 billion. Morocco's leader, Mohammed VI, became king in 1999 after his father, King Hassan II, passed away and makes most of his wealth from his presidential salary and vast businesses. With a net worth of $9 billion, owing to his business investments in banking, mining, tourism, real estate, telecommunications, and cement, King Mohammed earns $488,604 annually. 36. Felipe Nyusi, Mozambique. With a population of over 32 million, the country is among the poorest in Africa and one of the world's least developed, with a GDP of $16.1 billion. The country's leader, Felipe Nyusi, earns $46,800 annually. 37. Hage Geingob, Namibia. Namibia has a population of 2.5 million and has enjoyed stability since gaining independence from South Africa. As of 2022, President Hage Geingob of Namibia has a net worth of about $11 million and earns $99,241 as a salary per year. 38. Mohamed Bazoum, Niger. Niger is one of the world's least developed countries. The country has faced several coups and political instabilities since gaining independence from France in 1960. Today, Niger battles between the jihadist insurgency in the west of the country, frequent droughts, and widespread poverty. Despite betting on increased oil exploration and gold mining to help improve its economy, the country's GDP is still as low as $14.95 billion. While President Mohamed Bazoum is believed to be worth about $1.5 billion, his salary, much like those of his predecessors, remains largely unknown. 39. Muhammadu Buhari, Nigeria. With a population of more than 200 million, Nigeria is the most populous black nation on earth and contributes heavily to Africa's economy. Despite the country's recent economic woes and growing insecurity in the northeast that is hindering foreign investment, Nigeria is the richest nation in Africa with a GDP of over $510 billion. Its president, Muhammadu Buhari, has an estimated net worth of $80 million, owing to his vast investments in Nigeria and overseas, combined with an annual salary of $69,000. 40. Paul Kagame, Rwanda. Rwanda is a small landlocked country in East-Central Africa, with a population of a little over 13 million. The country's GDP currently stands at $11 billion, owing to the economic reforms brought about by its president, Paul Kagame. He has amassed a large fortune in the course of guiding his country to prosperity, with an annual salary of $85,000. 41. Carlos Villanova, São Tomé and Príncipe. As the second smallest economy in Africa, about one-third of the country's 220,000 inhabitants live far below the poverty line. With a GDP of just a little over $540 million, the country depends largely on donors and cocoa exports, but is looking to focus on exploiting offshore oil. Carlos Villanova became São Tomé's fifth president in October 2021. He's the least paid African leader with an annual salary of $2,930. 42. Macky Sall, Senegal. The West African nation of Senegal, a former French colony with a population of more than 17 million, has a tradition of stable governments and civilian rule. It's one of Africa's model democracies that hasn't suffered the violent coups that have plagued other countries on the continent. Senegal's has a steady growing GDP and is currently $27.6 billion. The country's president, Macky Sall, earns an annual wage of $15,210. 43. Wavell-Rancollouan, Seychelles. With a population of just 99,000, the Indian Ocean archipelago has a high per capita income and enjoys good health care and education. Its economy depends heavily on the fishing industry and upmarket tourism. Despite its tiny population, Seychelles boasts a fairly good GDP of $13.3 billion. The country's fifth president, Wavell-Rancollouan, has an attractive salary of $23,700 a year. 44. Julius Maada Bio, Sierra Leone. The country has a population of over 8 million, but is rich in diamonds and other minerals that have helped the West African nation maintain annual GDP growth of 3.1% to reach $4.2 billion. Julius Maada Bio is Sierra Leone's president and a former soldier who took part in a military coup only to overthrow the then military regime and pave the way for free elections. With a net worth estimated to be between $1 to $10 million, President Julius Maada earns an annual salary of $12,220. 45. Hassan Sheikh Mohamud, Somalia. With a population of 16 million, Somalia has a GDP that stands at $7.2 billion and has been growing over the years. Since his election as president, his annual salary stands at $120,000. 46. Cyril Ramaphosa, South Africa. Home to one of Africa's largest and most advanced economies, South Africa has an amazing population of more than 60 million, making up slightly more than 5% of Africa's total population. It has a GDP of $420 billion, and the president, Cyril Ramaphosa, earns an annual wage of $223,500. 47. Salva Kiir Mayardit, South Sudan. Found in East Africa, South Sudan gained its freedom from Sudan in 2011. It has a population of over 11 million and a GDP of $12 billion. Salva Kiir Mayardit is the country's president who took over power from longtime rebel leader John Garang, who died in a helicopter crash. President Salva Kiir currently earns a salary of $60,000 per year. 48. Abdallah Hamdok, Sudan. Sudan was once Africa's largest country by area and one of the most geographically diverse states on the continent before the secession of South Sudan in 2011. Lieutenant General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan is the country's military leader, while Abdallah Hamdok serves as the country's civilian prime minister with an annual salary of $29,320. 49. Samia Suluhu Hassan, Tanzania. Tanzania is home to Africa's highest mountain, Mount Kilimanjaro, with a population of 61 million and an annual GDP of $67.7 billion. She took over power in March 2021 from the late John Magufuli. President Samia Suluhu currently earns a salary of $47,300 a year. 50. Foreign Togo. Togo, with a population of a little over 8 million, is one of the world's top producers of phosphates. Yet, it remains poor and dependent on foreign aid, with a GDP of $8.4 billion. The president's current net worth and annual salary remain unknown. 51. Kais Saied, Tunisia. This North African nation, with a population of more than 11 million, is more successful than its neighboring countries. Agriculture employs the bulk of Tunisia's workforce, with tourism playing a key role in boosting the country's GDP, which stands at $46.8 billion. Kais Saied has ruled Tunisia as president since October 2019, after he won a landslide victory over media mogul Nabil Karoui. President Kais Saied currently earns an annual salary of $16,700. 52. Yoweri Museveni, Uganda. Nicknamed the Pearl of Africa, Uganda is a landlocked East African country with a population of 47 million. Yoweri has ruled Uganda since 1986 after overthrowing his military predecessor. Over the years, he has amassed a lot of wealth from his annual salary of $183,216 and other ventures. President Museveni has been credited with restoring relative peace, stability, and economic prosperity to Uganda, taking its GDP to $40 billion. 53. Hakainde Hichilema, Zambia. Unlike most of its neighbors, Zambia has managed to avoid the war that has crippled much of Africa. Zambia has a population of 18 million people and an attractive GDP of $21.2 billion. Despite its fast economic growth and massive Chinese investments in the country, 2/3 of Zambians still live in poverty. President Hichilema of Zambia currently earns an annual salary of $63,100. 54. Emmerson Mnangagwa, Zimbabwe. With a population of 15 million, Zimbabwe's struggle for independence, power, and land has continued to run throughout its modern history. Once known as the breadbasket for Southeast Africa, the country has since the year 2000 struggled to feed its people owing to severe droughts. Despite the fall of Robert Mugabe and his 4-decade-long dominance, Zimbabwe still remains impoverished and cash-strapped with a GDP of $26.2 billion. President Emmerson currently earns $146,590 yearly as salary.